Hello, I'm the Deer Runner. In this analysis video, I'll be analyzing the severe abnormalities around Himika Toga in the My Hero Academia series. To prove she has been lying about who she is the entire time and to finally figure out the truth about her figuring out who she actually is, who trained her, and what is her true goals. This will contain spoilers for the My Hero Academia series. This is your final spoiler warning. Now, to give a brief history on who she claims to be, which will raise a significant amount of red flags. When we dig deeper, Himika Toga seems to be a high school blood-drinking mass murderer, with sexual attraction being her motive, with shape-shifting powers that are dependent on drinking the blood of the one she wants to transform into, with the ability to also replicate the quirk power of the one she drinks the blood of. She had been what was described by society as having a normal life, until she attacked a fellow classmate drinking his blood, then disappeared. And when we see her, how she talks about her murderous sexual desires, it really does look convincing, but when you look at her skills and confirmed accomplishments, her story really starts falling apart. First major abnormality shown is that she has never been confirmed to have directly murdered an innocent person and has never permanently injured anyone that is confirmed to be innocent for a great deal of the series. And even if she will do that to an innocent, it should have happened by a long time ago with many victims, but instead she had only been killing people that are monstrous, irredeemable villains. Though she had claimed without giving evidence that she is the blood-draining murderer, which those blood-draining murders had stopped around the time she claimed responsibility, so she never really proved she was the blood-draining mass murderer, which, killing this person in secret, could have allowed her to take credit for the crimes, and she hasn't done those crimes yet in a confirmed way. We can confirm she killed one unknown person before joining the League of Villains, which we know nothing about them. So that does confirm there is at least one murder that may have been the killer. Due to Toga's ability to transform into people works more efficiently when she is naked, I'm going to avoid visual aids when those situations she is naked happens, which starts with this one. We do know Toga is really Toga due to Aizawa using his quirk canceling ability on Toga, deactivating her transformation ability, proving that she is clearly Toga, not a person impersonating her. To look for more evidence that her story is false, first off, she somehow had obtained top-of-the-line insane levels of combat, skills that even the heroes that specialize in combat likely would never reach her level. Toga demonstrated she can easily defeat Deku with her skills despite his power just by utilizing the skills of stealth and non-superpower enhanced hand-to-hand combat that her group trains and recruits in, which shows the sheer power of this group. She clearly prolonged the fight, demonstrating how helpless he is against her, and showed her ambush ability, showing a full range of her abilities. She had bragged about significant mental control gained through training, and demonstrated ability to resist the effects of powerful mind control powers, which was gained by her training, which she described as extremely intense, and said she had described as having an incredible determined mental state to get trained, and claimed of being top-of-the-line student.
Huh? What just happened? It's like I couldn't stop the words from coming.
Wow, that was pretty stupid.
It wasn't me, Toga, I swear. And you.
If I drink someone's blood, I can turn into them.
True.
Whatever I take in turns into energy, so the more I drink, the longer I can hold on to the form. One
True.
drink lets me look and sound like someone for about a day. Plus, if I drink a bunch of different people's blood at the same time, I can turn into any of them.
True.
I can recreate their clothes, too. They get layered under my own, so it helps to get naked before I transform, which can be a little embarrassing.
True, and affected my visual aids. But then she decides to not say one part of it, in which she can actually copy the quirks as well. Which is, you can obviously tell that this girl having, even if she somehow got all those skills over that period of time, she was really in a combat zone, not really training on all the things. She would have learned it by now if she had actually could copy quirks. Not in the situation she finds herself in. She also has both shown and bragged about how she was trained in a top-of-the-line stealth as well, which her demonstrating her ability does confirm she was trained. But that wouldn't make sense with the description of being just a schoolgirl, which she had reached around the age when people had started to be trained for combat in society, then disappeared for a long time. And there has been no information revealing who trained her, and clearly that is not what a normal life would be considered, which was described by the person that researched her. Her mental state also should have made it impossible for her to convince or trick someone to train her, unless her mental abnormalities is a lie. So unaccounted for extreme skills in history is enough to ask, what if she is lying, and what would be the motive for a group to secretly train such a person? Well, basically she's perfect. Her base ability being that she can fully copy the looks, mimic the personality effectively, copy the voices, and superpowers are the ones she transforms into. Making if she's trained, she would perfectly copy anyone. But the training she got being able to now avoid any mental control quirks, insane combat skills, and stealth skills, she would be absolutely perfect. The best you could possibly get in regard to shapeshifters. As all defenses that would be able to be deployed includes superpowers that would put all double agents in society out of business, she can get by. She could go basically anywhere, do anything with a near perfect chance of success, then leave without anyone ever knowing it was her that did it, and that would require insane amounts of specialized training, which she claimed and demonstrated she got despite having nothing from official sources or nothing close, and her psycho killer personality that is now in question wouldn't have allowed her to trick someone long term to train her. But she disappeared for a long time at the age training would normally occur around, and any group would have seen the insane value she could have contributed to them. Clearly, the likelihood that some group took her in is extremely higher than the possibility that she had done this on her own and tricked someone else to do it. But another skill that would be required for her to learn is to act, which is top-of-the-line training in other fields of using her transformation ability that is near perfect. She clearly would have been taught if a secret group is training her. So basically an actress that could fake anything. And since we do confirm she killed a single person before joining the League of Villains, if that was a bludgeoning kill, that guy would be required to be removed for her act, as it would be key if she takes the place of a mass murderer. Then all kills in that way the killer did need to only come through her. Which also Toga never actually been proven to have killed anyone in the way the blood-draining murderer did, despite the sheer level of psycho behavior that would have needed her to have done it to make sense. Keep in mind, her ability that there are extreme levels of suspicious activity during this time in the League of Villains. During her first mission, the summer training camp attack, which they were to use an overwhelming force to attack spread out heroes. During the initial attack sequence, the current events and things were being shown, which Toga was clearly shown to be tracking Uraraka and Floppy, then long events that were set into motion at the same time played out. Which at least a half hour would go by with Toga knowing the positions, which meant she waited that entire time then attacked, which once for those long events that concluded showed up, so everything they did happened before she decided to attack. So a long time, at least a half hour without any strategic or mental reasoning, which a psycho act should have realistically had her attack them much earlier, but somehow picked the time when the only large hero group would head through close to her area. And we can easily see that she was being very noisy, so this group would have been able to easily be attracted to her location. We can also see Choji is in that group, who has extreme levels of hearing, supernatural abilities, so the noise the battle made would have been able to be heard by that group several times the distance away than normal, which is statistically impossible for the situation to play out like that on accident. But since she does have extreme stealth skills, she'd be able to have hid and keep track of nearby hero groups, allowing her to time her attack to when a hero group was close enough to get attracted to a noisy attack, which when they decided to head over to her and with the noise would guarantee the hero's arrival. We can see clearly during the whole time she had been wasting an extreme amount of time, looking step by step if it was to buy time and alert the heroes. She first stopped the attack and introduced herself with a very wasteful use of being able to ambush by just grazing Uraraka's arm with a knife, now making both Uraraka and Froppy on high alert and fully able to fight at the best, potentially to draw out the battle instead of killing them in a second with an ambush. She delayed a lot, then she attacked again, but this time targeted Froppy's tongue, which made it so Froppy couldn't use a tongue attack that could have restrained Toga, effectively ending the battle, leaving both heroes with no ability to now effectively fight her, allowing her to waste as much time as she wants and make noise as long as Toga doesn't decide to seriously attack them. Toga had also demonstrated that she knew who Froppy and Uraraka's names were, so she did research and could have easily been able to find out their official and accurate quirk ability descriptions. Then after a bit of delays and pinning Froppy to a tree without hurting Froppy, continued to delay in a scary way which had Uraraka attack to defend her restrained friend. Which it looked like Toga went for stabbing Uraraka in the head as her knife caught Uraraka's hair. But as trained in sword fighting, I know that this is a very easy to miss target, so could have been meant to miss. Then with letting Uraraka get the upper hand, as Toga would have easily beat Uraraka if she took her seriously, Toga was restrained, but freaked out Uraraka enough with the most disturbing speech I have ever heard in anime, while stabbing Uraraka with the blood-draining device, while showing sexual attractions when draining Uraraka's blood. So when the hero group arrived, they made noise surprising Uraraka, which Uraraka wanted to just get away at that point and now startled and had Toga escape and run off. So clearly we may be looking at orchestrated events, and really the possibility this was a coincidence with Toga's ability to fake it makes it not really a likely possibility, which the next one easily showed it happening again. Toga, with demonstrating she knew the ability of the ones she is targeting, knew her small knife would be ineffective against Shoji's regeneration, but her potentially fake sexual attraction personality would not allow her to reasonably be expected to target him. So she went for Deku, who was close to Choji as he was just carrying him. She called out loudly to Deku, launched a small long-range attack at him, and made sure it was obvious she was focused on him. Choji easily would have seen this. Toga restrained Deku easily, and wasting plenty of time eventually does a pose instead of just stabbing him with a knife, while talking about how she wants to stab him, which Choji easily hit her off of him with the delays and making it obvious what is happening. And clearly, with Toga's massive combat skills, she should have been looking for any enemies targeting her, especially one running over a long open space that Choji needed to cross to get to them. Then she said for jealousy reasons she will attack Shoji to get to Deku, guaranteeing she is harmless. Then uncharacteristically obeys a retreat order and leaves as soon as she gets the opening to do so. So as we have basically caught her orchestrating events to put her in a position where she doesn't kill innocents, risking her life in that pursuit while keeping her cover of being a loyal villain. We know that this group she's in has morals, as Toga maintains that strategy. And since the League of Villains has been at this point she joined became known as an obvious significant threat, bringing the branch of the biggest by far and most powerful criminal organization that is there, planned for that group to become dominant and made their intentions clear by demonstrating they have the unique resources, the multiple corrupted humans of the biggest criminal organization, the Nomus, which at this point the legal organization thought that this group was clearly the biggest threat to society, was wiped out. But now they know it isn't. It is obvious a lot of groups in legal and illegal would want to infiltrate for retaliation for the rumored ultimate power that many believe is real, which it is in this criminal organization. obviously at this point has it, so infiltration should be expected. So we basically caught she is in the fact of infiltrated from an unknown group who doesn't want her to kill innocents. And we can now completely assume the person she killed before joining the League of Villains was the blood-draining murderer, as the murder stopped after that, which, even if he wasn't the killer, was taken care of secretly. Which, by my research stating all the key events are shown and the whole story is devoted to as it is an interpretation of a conversation explaining important things that happened, we can assume this kill had to be important as it was shown, and therefore is a real blood-draining murderer she steals reputation from. Another major one is that despite her acts saying she's blindly loyal to the League of Villains, completely buying the pitch they made to recruit her with being completely loyal to Stain, she has been shown to, instead of telling them all that she can offer them, basically had very slowly and for many not been confirmed to show them her true abilities through most of the time for them. She did tell them she is a shapeshifter with how they gave her complementing equipment for that ability, but during the battle hit her extreme skills, just showing basic but effective knife throwing with basic slashing. She demonstrated her true ability to Deku during a not sanctioned by the League of Villains mission when she infiltrated the licensing exam, and in that private and likely can be classified surveillance of her involvement, demonstrated all her stealth and combat training. I will get back to that later to figure out why she did that. Then on the next mission for the League of Villains, demonstrated she didn't tell them about her quote copying ability, as when twice in her and herself were hit by the mind control ability that, if it works, makes them tell the truth. Twice did not react in a way that at all that would have shown he knew Toga was able to resist it, and was faking it with the false responses she gave. And throughout the battle that followed hit of stealth and combat true potential, except once when she needed to take Aizawa seriously to evade, but that was completely in private, with no witnesses or surveillance, other than a few heroes that only got to see a single scaled combat move, and could be told later on to not push the issue. That would, if the villains are tricking, basically now have a fully trusted member that is a traitor that can viciously blindside and gather information without them realizing it, as they continue to trust her due to they do not know what she can do, while they think they do know, which with her insane abilities is basically a fatal mistake for most unfortunate enough to be in such a position with Toga. So looking over her acting, it is very alarming and convincing, but such an intense situation and likely would have a person faking it to have trouble to maintain at all times. There were very significant emotional changes she has had, which I had tried to look carefully at her facial and body language to see if I could find any tells. And on top of that, emotions of people are extremely complex when displayed, which she seemed to be able to maintain when transforming into people. So with such complexity, a weakness may have been expected to be seen. What I found was a quirk weakness allowing her true emotions to come out, while finding she is highly dependent on a quirk to maintain a strict set of possible emotions, which one of the emotions being dominant. It is on all the time when she is in a normal form, which her smiling face is one that is dominant in that form. But strong enough emotions will distort the emotions she is displaying. But if it is pushed farther, break through showing her true emotions, this will be shown with a long list of showing these tells by showing that they appear under certain conditions as well, and makes sense with what we will have to have found so far in this report. We start when she murdered that unknown individual before joining the League of Villains. We can see her body pose is exact same when in the Kamina ward when she faced her own death, and thousands of innocents had died in that sudden battle, which she failed the objective to let her escape by Bakugo escaping. But we do see during the murder scene her smiling face, which is what I believe the dominant default face that was maintained, as her emotions were in check enough as that was a bad person, the blood-draining murderer. Though she was still distressed at that point, with her training, she would not be as freaked out as her fake emotions were not distorted, and she demonstrated as she killed the villains it wasn't enough to break her emotional block she had on all the time, so no facial distortions were detected. We can see during the recruitment she had a game plan, and the act must have been it, which will need more information before analyzing that further, which I will. But when Shigaraki had unexpectedly tried to kill her and the other one, her pupils constricted and started to distort, showing she was not expecting that outcome, and it scared her. We can see as she initially spots Uraraka and Frappe, knowing a lot could go wrong, she had her smile freak out, which was an emotion of facing that bad situation coming over her. Now for the first battle, when Uraraka took advantage of Toga throwing a missing knife attack to her head, her emotions did change, but not distort, which for a shapeshifter, a few choice emotions had to be ready to be allowed to be shown, which she fluently utilized, and it basically an outcome she did have a solution for, which with how she made sure to freak out Uraraka with a weapon, she was able to make sure it wasn't immobilized. She was just planning strategically and implementing her strategy instead of freaking out, while maintaining believable emotions. When Toga escaped, looking back at the hero group, she must have been emotionally on edge, with how close she almost lost her own life when trying to save Uraraka and Frappe. But when she saw Deku, the one that Shigaraki made clear he wants dead, it is too much, and her emotions started to distort her smile, showing an increase in happiness, which with her thinking she is being evaluated would add it to her act, saying she is attracted to him, which can be an expected response for her act of sexual desires, motivating her killing, and Shigaraki making Deku, who is handsome, stand out to her when asking her to kill him. We can see when she didn't need to maintain an emotional state, alone heading to the retreat area, as she was told they captured Bakugo. She knew her luring them over had caused it, as tracking that group must have seen the main target there, which within seconds of her escape, by using them, she gets a confirmation the target is captured. You can see she is distressed and just also left a very emotional situation, but with no one around, didn't need to maintain the facade, and it'd be hard to anyone with a quirk weakness and with how emotionally she may have been avoiding death about a minute ago. Next battle, everything went as planned, so no distortions. Now for when Bakugo was being held prisoner, she basically played along, showing beneficial emotions. But then the heroes barged in. She completely looked surprised, but as that was so straightforward, long event for her, then an unexpected thing happened. Without her showing distortions, it showed her ability was in a passive, not on guard state, which was susceptible to unexpected situations, letting her true emotions come out. Which all her emotions were not crazy, but a normal, scared, and surprised person being surrounded by an attack force that doesn't know she is a double agent and potentially on her side. Which Shogo was shown to be in distress early on the start of the major battle in the Community Ward, but with heroes that think she is enemies and a teleportation side effect of gray liquid bursting from her mouth, then covering her body, then the location she is sent to revealed destruction, that could only mean thousands are now dead. Even if Toga was telling the truth that she's a psycho killer, she would only look distressed, let alone if she was lying about being a psycho killer. With all that destruction that happened next, an unexpected ultimate villain appeared. We can see she was distressed, but when they gave her the objective to recapture Bakugo, her mask came back on, as her psycho kill state needs to be there to explain why she is still fighting for the villains after such destruction. Then when she lost and when she saw first signs of defeat with the hostage being rescued, so facing very soon death, as now the heroes do not need to hold back, she got very scared, a normal reaction, which under such extreme conditions and being scared would be a lot more beneficial than putting fake emotions. so why it looked natural as she had no reason to hide her true emotions while trying to get them to retreat, but still kept on the villain's side in case they escaped to maintain her double agent status, and not do anything that would jeopardize her only escape route, the villains, and once they fully retreat, she, despite her psycho killer personality, would make it. She wouldn't be extremely sad, but she clearly was. Her emotions had broke through her facade as it was too much as so many died. Simple pieces no more, she almost died. She had her hands bloodied by the incident with her maintaining her cover, and it obviously didn't go as planned, which would explain her in an absolute sadness as it was too much for her. Or for some reason the psycho killer actually felt sorry for someone, which is not realistic. Next, for the license exam, we can see her emotions were maintained, but specifically what she told Deku is telling and demonstrating the training she got, showing extreme value to Deku, which once she revealed who she is, that a recruitment pitch would show how determined they are to win, which revealing later on to Deku who she actually is would have this event be massively important for trying to get Deku on the side. This basically looked like a demonstration to Deku for recruitment, which also add on that she was not ordered by the League of Villains to head out there. She was ordered by a group to do so, as that was extremely ambitious. Which also she completed the event she had been demonstrating to Deku so that she can really show her group's competence. Since Deku is extremely important, this likely secret hero group is clearly going to want their ultimate hero as a potential recruit. And if they didn't know, then why would they send her out there, and how did they choose this randomly, which coincidences don't happen? Looking at how powerful this group is and the now clear sign they know Deku's secret, because that information on Deku is so secret, it had to be one of the few that knew, therefore believed they were fighting to stop the end of the society and any chance of a good outcome for humanity. Which clearly with that goal, they do anything, which in Toga's case is clearly most likely one of those actions covered by ends justify the means. Now when Toga saw the major crime boss come in when expecting recruits to be brought in, you can see Toga react quickly for a short time, showing shock like she knows who that major person is, which with such a normal environment which she had basically been under constant situations waiting may have had her guard down to shocks like that, which she quickly had her emotions and seemed oblivious to who he is, which we have seen that before when she got surprised news her efforts made their target capture happen directly during the summer training camp attack, which she was on her own, not needing to hide her emotions, and was in distress due to the news, which are basically the same category triggers seen for this one, which shows she strongly reacted to him, so knew him, which can be expected as she is in a powerful, connected, unethical, legal organization pursuing major criminal operations. But her cover story is a schoolgirl that randomly went on a rampage. She would not be expected to know his powers or who he is, so she kept her distance. Then when the villains demonstrated that his overwhelming powers to her boss Shigaraki wouldn't allow her to go out there to die, she offered to attack him, knowing his response, to help her cover. Looking at Toga's reaction to a fellow League of Villain member's sudden demise, the camera angle clearly stated she was extremely distressed about losing that team member, which all looked genuine. When you're a double agent trying to befriend to gain more access, it can get emotional when you have to finally turn on one of your friends or watch something bad happen to one of your deceived friends, which we can see soon after she pushes the idea of the friendship between them, which strongly indicates she's been trying to befriend Magna and the others up to that point of that person's death. I don't think this was an act, and according to future narration theory that I made, the camera angle shown does state a genuine deceitful reaction by Toga, which later on another situation, another one of them is facing imminent death, which that time by her own hand, in a betrayal that was called off, had her extremely distressed when she had enough privacy to not get caught showing her true emotions. We can see that when they had a still image of those members of the League of Villains, as a visual representation, not a real event, it showed everyone intimidating and determined except for her. She was obviously scared, which with how it is shown she's distressed by what she is doing and likely understands the threat to this group she has infiltrated, it is telling us directly. Now the next part had Shigaraki give an order to Toga and Twice to join the Yakuza group that killed a team member Magna. For about a couple of minutes they refused, and Toga at one point did it in a threatening way, which everyone in the group were opposed to it, which she was basically forced to by Twice emotionally complaining about it, and knew if she just go along with it, with the plan, her status would be hurt as her allies would view her as an unsympathetic psycho instead of a reliable ally, which she had to emphasize calling them true friends and like family to get them to trust her, which also had to oppose Shigaraki's order till he had a good enough reason so she can maintain a high status. And likely he figured Shigaraki would not randomly kill them, as he would lose all his support if he did.
Their plan has some serious potential. So from today on, Toga and Twice will be Yakuza members.
Need better excuse, because
I find this joke humorous. That's hilarious, Shigaraki. They wanted Kurogiri too, but I held out. He's got his own job to do right now, so there's no way I can spare him. It's too important. There's an underground route you can take to... What are you thinking with this crap?
This is
Stop
why.
pretending everything is cool. Why are you letting this beat-faced loser give you orders? He killed Big Sis Mag, and he took Mr. Compressor.
Yeah, that was a shocking one.
Did you just forget? And it's all my fault. I brought him to meet with you. I may be a villain, but I'm human too. We all are, man. Come on, Toga. Don't you agree with me?
And she had to
Question I've got.
side with Twice though.
What we need to. To me, the League is a place where I feel at home.
And she really makes it look like
To make
she's
them
a good
place
ally.
where I can do whatever I want and live freely. It'd be such a bummer to get distracted from my goal.
And if she had just went for what Shigaraki was telling her,
I guess what
it would not end well for her reputation-wise.
Should I do something I don't want to do with people I want to cut?
And of course, he can't just kill them right now, because he'll lose all his reputation. He's back in the corner. He needs them.
Because this is for all of us.
And that is a really good excuse, actually.
Check. So they'll try to win you too.
And that gives her the opening to go for it.
I want you to infiltrate them, flatter them, but never forget they're beneath us. Twice, you said they have to pay for what they did. We'll make sure they do. This will work. I believe in you guys.
She was then sent there demonstrating her ability to resist and powerful mental manipulation quirks by hiding her true powers, which included the omitted can copy quirks. Then it was clear to her that an ultimate prize was here with the girl that is held captive, quirk with a world-altering power. With the confirmation by the mental manipulation quirk questioning her partner, Shigaraki had not told them to betray them, but she took control of the situation, destroying the villains between the heroes and the rescued target. She then stabbed one of the heroes, but of course not permanent injury, and that one person out of the three she could have targeted was completely useless. Only Aizawa and Deku needed to be fully able to fight, so she used an expendable pawn to prop up her cover after being the villains for so long. Now when we look at her carefully when she is crawling through a destroyed area with no one looking at her face, we can see sadness come over her while her voice clearly matched her psycho personality. Talking about wanting to see Deku's bloody body, which shows she had let her true emotions come through, which she was just controlling her voice for acting. Also when still looking away when talking about revenge against the crime boss that killed her fellow team members, she did look a bit off, a continuation of sadness and determination to do something, which of course she was trying to secure that ultimate power in the form of the child Eri, which if she did, she would have had to kill Twice to cut off communications to lay report on her betrayal, or even to kill him, secretly deliver the girl, then come back, which, talking about a similar subject about friends in League of Villains getting killed and how they support each other, acknowledging they want revenge, was a bit emotional. She might even respect them, so it was hard for her. Well, how she's betraying them, which can explain those emotions, which also on the verge of potentially banning a position, can do the same. But once she turned her back, showing her face, her psycho act immediately came back, and we don't see any more distortions.
And they're off. Our best plan of action would be to make a break for it immediately. What should we do, Toga? Kiss, baby?
There's a good chance Izuku's gonna get bloodied up. I'd really like to see that again.
And she looks really sad, so that's not believable.
Right now, I just want to make Overhaul cry like a little baby.
In that case,
I'm not sure if she's even serious about that.
here's what we should do.
Also, he has multiple personalities, so he's just talking to one person.
Oh, that's perfect, Gene. It'll make Tomura real happy, too.
Then retreated once it was clear the heroes got the target securely, which she had also tried to snatch a girl at the same time, which likely, if she was successful, would have left the League of Villains to deliver the girl with the world-altering powers to her true leader, then disappear, being sent to other assignments or a less directly involved way, still involved as a shapeshifter that powerful can still go anywhere she wants. Now, due to Twice calling out that they should help the rest of the League of intercept the completed darts that can erase quirks, she had to assist or do things that would make her suspicious, which would be killing Twice. So she told the League of Villains intel, which led to Shigaraki getting devastating weapons, but kept her there to focus on the grand prize.
We're currently transporting 11 members of Shiei Hasaikai to Togadana Villain Hospital. They have all sustained serious injuries. Their personal belongings have been confiscated. In addition to the bullets we were told about, we've also found previously unreported capsules.
Indeed, they're here just as you said. This was the fastest route from the Yakuza headquarters to the nearest villain hospital. The stage is now set. Thanks for letting us know.
You're so efficient, Toga. You deserve a round of applause.
Gene's the one who reminded me to call.
Fight!
I got a little distracted watching Izuku.
Run away fast!
Sorry we're not there, so you have to get your hands dirty.
Just the one hand, my dear.
We couldn't get the girl at the center of their plan, but we're pretty sure you'll have no problem intercepting the finished product. We also watched the cops as they loaded everybody up, and I didn't see them take anything. Even if you don't get what we're after.
Kill them!
I bet you still want to say hi, right?
Oh crap! That's Tomura Shigaraki from the League of Villains!
So now let's catch who she is actually working for. Of course, there are more than one member, and this group is likely extremely ambitious, extremely skilled, highly influential within legal systems, though clearly it is a secret unethical organization, and powerful. But their identity can be discovered by catching another operative and showing a link between that operative and Toga. This secret member will be shown to be Dabi, who was with Toga when she was recruited, which can be expected to try as quick as possible to add in secret members, as just before that incident where the League of Villains revealed they had no moves, which meant they are fully linked, and the main public branch of that powerful organization, infiltration, would be pursued at that point, not before, as they were just one of many, but now the main target, so immediate action would be required, which was sending in Toga and Dabi. Looking at Dabi during the first mission for the League of Villains, which also Toga's first mission, he had demonstrated he knew who Eraser was, like Toga knew Floppy and Uraraka, by saying the names.
Looks like your concern has you distracted, Eraser.
And with Aizawa's ability demonstrated before finding the League of Villains at an earlier incident in a USJ, Dabi should have been aware, but instead made sure Aizawa had eye contact with plenty of time to dodge his killing shot, then got beaten. For the ones that don't know, never let Aizawa directly look at you in battle, or he will suppress your quirk, and also his extreme agility would mean he only needs an instant to dodge all of it, which doomed Dabi in a way like he was asking for it. Which that was an exact clone of Dabi using twice his power. This exact clone thoughts was shown saying he doesn't have much time instead of stating he is trying to win. Which his clone died, but as he died facing the fear of death in an intimidating way, he devoted his last moments also at the only villain to tell the heroes valuable information about the main attack force, without thinking he would silence witnesses. Saying specifically they plan to attack the spread out heroes, and that the leadership of the heroes need to focus on fighting back strongly or there will be casualties. That would all have devastated the enemies across the board, though Aizawa took a cautious approach to this information, so he's not involved with Dabi and made that information not get used. Obviously though, no confidence in his ability, and then suddenly all his strength came back and he's pumping them full of information. Just told them the main targets at the beginning, one of the biggest group of heroes. That's gonna cause issues for the villains if the heroes take it seriously. Also, despite the delays the villains faced, the forest fire Dabi set up never consumed any of the heroes, which meant it is very poorly placed. Next, after a while with the heroes getting information, villain's target for capture is Bakugo. Another clone of Dabi came in while not taking advantage of his flame ability that could have torched them all while trapping them in the building section. They were in, easily letting himself get restrained, told them Bakugo is a target, that there was only a handful of villains so the heroes' numbers can overwhelm them. The plan of the villains to utilize the incident to cast extreme doubt on the reputation of the heroes, and made it clear they will kill those spread out heroes that were not able to retreat to regrouping areas. Then he died. So flooding the heroes with valuable information and making sure no one dies.
You've already been defeated, regardless of what happens to me. The two most trusted pillars of the superhuman society are linked together. UA, the pinnacle of hero education, and All Might, the symbol of peace. But embarrassing incidents have damaged the world's trust in you both. Sloppy management keeps allowing villains to slip in and attack. People are so shaken that they've almost lost all faith in you. Imagine how they'll react when they find out you let a student get kidnapped. It only took a handful.
That's the main long-term plan. And for short-term as well. Look at that. He just told them the biggest weakness. They don't have the numbers. You can overwhelm them. And saying the long-term plan and confirmed Bakugo is being captured. It's no other villain had done that. That's a lot of information. Dabi had control of the Nomu and coincidentally had called it off right before it would kill its first heroes, saving their lives during a not altered by outside forces conversation showing it had to have come from either Dabi or Twice. An impossible to happen accident, so it was on purpose on top of what has been shown. Which also the subject of Dabi forgetting to release the Nomu early on till Twice reminded him meant Dabi was delaying the Nomu release, which he also showed ability to in some way control movement direction of the Nomu, so with the delays allowing a lot to retreat to go on a guard, and plenty knocked out by the gas, hiding them in the brush left the area with a very low amount of visible targets, to allow Dabi control of it to lead the Nomu away from potential targets, if he had a plan.
Hey, Dabi! Speaking of which, totally not important, but shouldn't you be calling that Nomu back? You said he would only react to your voice, correct? That sounded vital.
That's right. You're the one who reminded me to let him loose on the students earlier.
No problem. Bow before me!
Shigaraki did design the monster specifically for me. He's probably killed someone by now.
And he clearly identified a student trailing him, but spared him. Dabi is massively powerful, but on the final battle decided to just stand back and cover the main captured target, preventing him from easily killing the heroes. He did not tell Nomu to attack that ride, but that thing might not have been able to distinguish between friend and foe, so it's going to be ignored. And the last point for a summer training camp attack, he was the only one that could secure the captured heroes. And if he didn't, it would have been obvious he threw the match. So to maintain his cover, he did. After the fact, a pretty much highly suspicious report from a cop to by a civilian officially which is different than reality that a person like Dobby was spotted entering the villain base with no reason to have seen that report. There are a lot of people with abnormal features, and Dobby wasn't on the radar, so he shouldn't be taking those reports seriously. Also, Dobby is very calm, so he wouldn't have made himself too obvious. But it ended up being key evidence to track down the villain's main base. And imagine if a person who is not threatened by a burned victim calls the cops to report them due to their looks made them uncomfortable. That is offensive, and a cop who gets a report would have yelled at them normally for trying to report that. Which makes that report should have been thrown out, or at least put in a file no one would be expected to look through. Forgotten forever except for that cop retelling of the stupid things he saw during the time he was a police officer, a long time later, and early gossip. But the one that took the report seriously is completely suspicious. This person is Namanasa, the only law enforcement officer in that area that had access to classified reports on the matter and extreme power to be able to investigate into any direction he wants. We look at the rest of them when he likely orchestrated that realization after Aizawa and Glad King described Dobby. Neither one of them were buying the crap he was giving them. And the officer that did get used to get the data was in the room, and of course this person was extremely uncomfortable about what Namanasa was saying about the very weak report being taken seriously. But on paper it looked good enough to be an effective cover story for how they actually got to the location, which was Dobby himself, the double agent sent in there. We can see he is unconscious during the commuter ward incident, which removes the League of Villains' most powerful normal member, so may have been faked. Now, Dobby did kill a bunch of criminals, which Toga also showed she is willing to do, but then he also killed a hero. Basically, the mission she was given, he would kill a great deal of people. Dobby had seemed loyal, but during the point he killed a sand hero, we can see past his lies. Now, Dobby had got the upper hand, taking advantage of the hero saving a cop. The hero said that those people you killed, do you feel sorry for the families left behind, which Dobby was just about to kill him. Dobby's facial expression on that incredible vicious situation clearly stated it got to him. He didn't want to do it, and it was painful for him. Then he got his composure back quickly and murdered the hero to keep his cover.
Are you alright? So predictable. Heroes always prioritize innocent lives.
Pretty cruel right there, cornering him.
Burnt corpses all over the city. That's your doing, isn't it? So the bosses are the only one people talk about. That's nice to hear. Have you ever thought about the families of those you murdered in cold blood?
And yes, that expression does say he did. A lot. Despite everything, he seemed to be so confident and willing to do all this stuff. But he felt sad.
I'm pretty sure he could only turn his top half into sand, so he's probably dead.
That factor also adds a hell of a lot more because he was about to kill the hero. So, if he was ever going to break down, it was definitely going to be during that point in time. Dobby did assist in acquiring the ultimate quick-destroying weapon for the League of Villains, but that weapon is very unlikely it can be replicated, so not as big of a target as the ultimate power All for One is. And he was just told to release that number at the end of Season 4, which he needed to do to maintain his cover, and if not, him or someone else would have. The evidence is massive in that regard, and with Dobby refusing to give his name or any identifying information, while at the same time has fire similar to known fire quick wielder Todoroki, while talking to Todoroki with a nickname Little Shoto instead of saying the normal naming people, that's really a very personal way to talk to Todoroki like a family member.
Well, isn't that a tragedy? Poor little Shoto Todoroki.
Which also Todoroki didn't just try to strike him down during that scuffle over the captured student Bakugo, or restrain him with ice. Also, report I just read, Dobby admitted it. So Dobby is secretly working for Namanasa and very likely is secretly one of the Endeavor's sons. So now the question is, can I link Toga to Dobby? Because if I can, all these resources that the group has would easily fill in the requirements to be considered potentially the likely unethical hero organization that has recruited Toga. Because Toga showed signs this unknown group had insane levels of influence and resources, which Dabi's team would fail, plus she comes in when they are trying to add in infiltrators, the concept of the ends justify the means is one of the scariest things. And with that group believing they are fighting for the fate of the world, which is true, it is clear they would be willing to do anything, which Namanasa's group is clearly doing that. And with Toga's public attack on that student with an unplanned for freakout, likely created by drinking blood, is very disturbing, so was told not to, making her body not receive expected inputs, causing conflicts. Then the cops easily tracked her down, realized what happened with their expected understanding of quirks, causing conflicts, being a defense for people involved in incidents. Basically, it's pretty straightforward. Someone who ends up suddenly going after a certain source, their quirk requires suddenly in a freakout and hurt people in pursuit, would be suspected clearly be one of the already heavily documented types of dangers from the quirks, which counseling and rather than jail would be used due to it wasn't their fault and would be a common enough problem, and Toga clearly would not be allowed to drink blood to satisfy her quirk expected inputs, which could have made her a ticking time bomb. Flashbacks also displays her in distress with disturbing visuals, showing something is extremely wrong, and the cops would have knew that when the attack was investigated, and with that sudden decision, she would be caught as it was unplanned for. But then she was too valuable. This group would have the authority to instead secretly train her. But we need a direct interaction with them by Toga to prove it, which, on top of the similar objective, resources and tactics she explored. Now, they both didn't get the same assignments, and some assignments had bloody minimum objectives. So any fluctuations can be contributed to that in things they did. But with the sheer value of keeping a hidden double agent inside reporting on when an absolute important event would happen, it clearly would be allowed with expectations will do anything to avoid compromising the role, though trying to avoid killing innocents is preferable. Now to look back at the recruitment, this group desperately needed to as soon as possible send a mole in due to the Nomu showed the greatest villain power that could destroy civilization was leading the League of Villains, which both these double agents together gave the League of Villains a full range of desirable options. Dabi showed himself to be a reasonable follower of Stain, which that group was falsely claiming his reputation to recruit at the time, which Dabi was willing to call out what should be viewed as obvious abnormalities to not let him look suspicious. Toga showed to be as also loyal to Stain, but was murderously unstable, and giving them the option of a recruit just in it for murderous desires as well, which makes up all the recruits Shigaraki had been able to recruit, so it is likely that the selection covered all potential recruitment or avenues that were preferred by the League of Villains. Now, Dabi stating he didn't trust Toga would be required response for his cover, though fully planned on as Toga being put in such a bad negotiating position, we didn't see distortions, but instead a reasonable response with emotions that were readily displayed response, which after Shigaraki recruited both of them, Dabi changed his stance on matters, saying he believed Shigaraki and acted like he was more crazy to explain his loyalty, and tried to give enough proof for not questioning Toga to not be suspicious, showing how much he's willing to make it in, which they both use the same compromised, trusted villain recruiting organization to do so. That is all the proof I have to the relationship to Namanasa. There's a great deal of evidence showing they both are traitors linked to a hero group, with being more specific which one Dabi is in, and there were a lot of circumstantial evidence linking them, and with the objectives being, when you dig deep, very similar, which also influence in legal systems, it is clear there's a high chance Toga is part of Namanasa's group. But of course neither one of them admitted yet to anything and have been trusted greatly by the League of Villains, while needing to not give off any evidence, so there's always room for error, but I think it's pretty clear that neither of them told us the truth, and clearly are traitors. Now on the surface, Twice did seem to be giving those two double agents openings, but according to rules I found with future messages, if he was disloyal, it would have been showing signs in a way you could miss it, but I checked and found no trace of it. It does look like he was just manipulated, and also has been shown to call out Dabi not releasing the Nomu, endangering the heroes greatly, while double agents try to avoid it during the summer training camp, and force Toga to get the League of Villains to acquire quick-destroying weapons, so he isn't a double agent. That seems to be all the information stored here, so I'll end my video here. That is my update for my Dabi and Toga research, 2 videos in 1. I hope you enjoyed this one and the ones to come. This has been a Deer Runner, the Runner of Deer. Thanks for watching.